In keeping with the idea of improving digestion, something else that Ayurveda has introduced me to is the concept of combining foods and then certain foods that we shouldn't combine together, which really tax the digestive system. And there's quite a few different rules, if you will. And when I was first introduced to them, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so annoying. I have enough rules about food, especially having gone through chronic illness and modifying my nutritional intake plan that way. I was thinking to myself, oh gosh, more stuff now to think about. But when I look back and I review those rules and thoughts about what you should and should not combine together, they make very good sense. For example, one thing that they talk about not ever combining together is milk and fruit or dairy and fruit. And it makes a lot of sense why, if you stop to think about it. Milk is going to be a more of a cooling type of food where fruit can be heating, but fruit will also have a higher sugar content. And if it's left to sit in the digestive tract, it can ferment or cause more acid to come off. And then that goes against the milk and it just makes it harder to digest. And so it causes things like gas and bloating just because it's sitting in there. Fruit really does digest very quickly on its own. And that is what's best to do, is to eat fruit on its own, actually, because it does digest so quickly. And so another thing, when we're taking it in with things like dairy takes a lot longer to process through the body. So while that's happening, that fruit is just kind of sitting in there. And again, as I said, it kind of goes rancid. And then that is left to create gases and things that make us have gas. So that's a really good reason why you wouldn't want to combine fruit and dairy, for example. And there are, again, quite a few other ideas. And so something else I was talking about as well is with ice cream. When we think about with fruit, first of all, if you listen to any of my other talks, you might have heard me mention that taking in cold food or cold beverages while we're eating is terrible, because we're dousing our internal agni, or our fire that burns through that food. And so when we're eating ice cream, we're dumping a cold substance into our body, so we're putting out the fire, and then we're going to add fruit on top of that. Well, the dairy itself is hard to digest, but then we're going to put the fruit on top of that too. And then that again sits in there while our poor body is just trying to turn itself on to start digesting. And it's got this other stuff that's breaking down, causing gas again and bloating. So just some things to think about. If you're interested in more of this information, you can Google it and look up different food combinations from an Ayurvedic perspective, and it'll tell you some of the other things that you would want to consider avoiding combining together. And I know I can remember from my waitressing days, you would never give a customer tea with cream and lemon because it would curdle. And so again, that's another combination that you wouldn't want to put together, is lemon and dairy. And lemon, in fact, with quite a few different food combinations, is bad. If I recall correctly, it was like cucumbers, nightshades. Nightshades in and of itself are a little bit more harder to digest, and there's quite a few reasons for that. But when you think about that, it's like I would always remember how gross that was when I would see that curdle like that in a cup. If it was somebody that didn't necessarily know what they were doing and they tried that and then they were like, "Miss, I need a new tea," I'd be like, "Yeah, no kidding." But if we're putting that into our body, that's even worse, because I can't just get you a new tea for your stomach, right? So you just have to be really mindful about that. And again, when we're looking at our nutritional intake plan, it's just best to think about, how do we feel when we eat something? Are we having a reaction to it? And if so, maybe start to deconstruct why that is happening. But Ayurveda will help you to look at some different concepts and ideas with this. So if you have further questions about this, feel free to reach out to me or any qualified Ayurvedic practitioner or Ayurvedic doctor. I actually see an Ayurvedic doctor. She's got way more experience than I do, and she helps to guide me. But great resources are available for you as long as you're willing to look around for them. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, feel free to Google Ayurveda and food combinations that you should avoid. Take care.